Whether we think about it or not, we all understand and participate in the artifice of film. But what if I told you that sometimes you are actually watching the truth? And that's because, believe it or not, during filming, sometimes things go wrong, sometimes directors push for realism, and sometimes faking it just doesn't cut the mustard. With that in mind then, I'm Josh from Whatculture.com, and these are 10 movie scenes where actors weren't faking. Number 10, Jay Baruchel freaks out, knocked up. Back in 2006, Knocked Up director Judd Apatow took his cast, including some of stoner comedy's biggest names in Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, Martin Starr, and Jay Baruchel, to Knott's Berry Farm in Southern California to film a roller coaster sequence for the anti-sex comedy. While Apatow intended to put the cast through the ringer by having them ride the roller coasters all day long, one of the cast members was a little less keen than the rest. Jay Baruchel brought a long ingrained fear of theme park rides with him to set, but sadly for him, Apatow wouldn't take no for an answer, and loaded him in with the rest of the cast on one of the park's craziest rides to revolve, rise, fall, and flip upside down at high speeds. In the footage captured, Baruchel can be heard screaming, "I gotta get off, I gotta get off," but this was far from an act. Suffering an actual panic attack mid-ride, he bolted from the coaster as soon as it stopped, broke down crying, and refused to go on another ride. As someone also pissed-scared of roller coasters, I can absolutely relate with this as well. Number 9, Viggo Mortensen plays Kick the Can, The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. 2002's The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers picked up immediately where its predecessor left off. With the Fellowship of the Ring broken and Merry and Pippin captured by a band of Uruk-hai, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli track the pair to the edge of Fangorn Forest, where they find a pile of burning orcs and Uruk corpses, where the Rohirrim laid waste to Merry and Pippin's captives in the night. Upon discovering one of the hobbits' scabbards in the ash though, Aragorn kicks an Uruk helmet and screams in anguish, dropping to his knees. However, what seems like a moment of beautifully acted emotional pain for his fallen comrades was, in fact, a moment of very real physical pain for actor Mortensen. Now, the stuff of cinema legend we know that 4 takes in, at Peter Jackson's insistence, he went full pelt on the helmet, aiming to bring it in as close to the camera as possible, but actually ended up breaking 2 toes in the process. That he stayed in character at all throughout is a credit not only to Mortensen as an actor, but the film as a whole. Number 8, Aubrey Plaza takes some time to herself, The To-Do List. In recent years, Aubrey Plaza has offered us range, depth, and a few surprises along the way, but her first major leading role came in the form of The To-Do List, playing Brandy Clark, a socially awkward teen trying to climb the sex ladder one salacious act at a time. It should come as no surprise then that she has to take matters into her own hands at some point. Enter the hilarious scene where Brandy tries masturbating for the very first time to check it off her list, if nothing else. What viewers didn't know in this scene, however, was that Plaza was actually doing it for real. As it was a bird's eye, full body shot with no camera trickery involved, the To-Do List writer-director Maggie Carey encouraged Plaza to approach the scene as it was written in the script, simply to masturbate. And what we see in the film is precisely what the actress decided to do, starting off awkwardly at first and then kinda getting into the flow of it. Number 7, Jane Levy worried that she'd killed her co-star, Evil Dead 2013. The Evil Dead remake wanted to live up to the insane practical effects of the original beloved trilogy, and as such utilized as little CGI as possible, which was a real departure for mainstream horror flicks at the time. However, just as Bruce Campbell once described the original films as being put through hell, new lead actor Jane Levy had a similarly traumatizing time bringing the horror of the Evil Dead to life. As such, pretty much every scene in the film that looks real probably is, from the actress being buried in the dirt with a bag around her head to having to puke up blood directly into the face of a co-star. It's the latter stunt we're talking about today though, as despite how simple it looks, it was actually one of the most stressful to film. According to Levy on the DVD commentary, she was really worried that her co-star was in pain, even worrying that she was actually drowning her by shooting the puke directly into the actress's mouth and nose. As a result, there wasn't much acting required in the scene at all. It was as uncomfortable for both parties as it looks on screen. Number 6, Brad Pitt takes one to the ear, Fight Club. Hard to believe that David Fincher's masterful adaptation of cult novel Fight Club is now decades old, given how fresh, dynamic, and relevant it still feels, but some things, ironically, are built to last. Centering around Edward Norton's unnamed narrator and his imaginary friend Tyler Durden, the film drags us by the scruff of our shirts into a world of bare-knuckle fighting, corporate sabotage, and luxury soap. But this all begins with one small, inconvenient punch. Insisting that we could never really know ourselves until we've been in a fight, a drunken Tyler challenges the narrator to hit him as hard as he can in the car park of a late-night bar. Obligingly, the narrator lands a blow on Tyler's ear, which results in an honest-to-God unscripted response from Pitt. And that's because Edward Norton actually hit Brad Pitt in the ear in this scene, with the director just telling him to go for it to catch him by surprise. With that in mind, it's no wonder that Brad Pitt has never worked on a Fincher picture again, but the results are hard to fault. Number 5, Diane Kruger is choked by the director, Inglourious Basterds. Quentin Tarantino is known for his hands-on approach to filmmaking, generally refusing to use a second unit and getting stuck in on set with the actors, one eye to the viewfinder, the other on his carefully constructed script. But sometimes he takes that a little bit too literally, at least that's the case with 2009's Inglourious Basterds. During the filming of the scene where international actress turned Allied spy Bridget von Hammersmark is choked to death by Hans Landa, things just weren't coming together as planned. Tarantino felt that Diane Kruger's response to a loose pair of hands around her neck looked too filmic, too fake, and too ordinary, so his solution? Well, it was that he choke her out instead, for real this time. Trusting that she was in a good pair of hands, Kruger consented to go ahead with it, and the close-up of her face in the final cut is the real deal. Tarantino's very own mitts choking the life from one of his leading stars. Though this move has of course been a controversial topic in the years since, both director and star maintain that it was consensual and worthwhile. Number 4, Anna Kendrick gets smashed, drinking buddies. Despite its star power in Anna Kendrick, Olivia Wilde, and a host of other familiar faces, 2013's Drinking Buddies flew in under the radar for most, which is a damn shame because it's a great movie. The film centers around two brewery co-workers, Luke and Kate, whose budding romance doesn't mesh well with the fact that they both have partners outside of work in the form of Jill and Chris. Needless to say, there is a lot of drinking that occurs throughout the film, but there are a few scenes in particular where what you see is really what you get. As Drinking Buddies was filmed at Chicago's Revolution Brewery, beer was, quote, cheaper than water, and in a particular scene where Jill plays cards with Luke, actress Anna Kendrick actually got sloshed for real. Not realizing that they were no longer working with zero alcohol beer, she kept putting them away as the scene went on, and was soon drunk enough to need a timeout and some R&R. Number 3, Robert Pattinson is not the ideal Lighthouse guest, The Lighthouse. While Anna Kendrick getting a little bit tipsy on Drinking Buddies is one thing, Robert Pattinson took it to the next level with The Lighthouse. Stories of how much fun and chaos R. Pattinson and Willem Dafoe had on the set of Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse has already entered the annals of filmic urban legend, but how much of it is actually true? Well, as a pair of wikis isolated at a New England lighthouse in the 1890s, Pattinson and Dafoe spent almost the entire shoot squeezed into small spaces together, talking in old-timey speak, singing sea shanties and burping, farting, drinking, and generally getting up to no good while they slid headlong into insanity. But reading directly from the Jared Leto playbook, sometimes these things can go a little bit too far. In particular, Pattinson has admitted that during the drinking scenes, and when the camera wasn't rolling, he drank himself into a barely legible stupor, often throwing up or wetting himself to boot. Number 2, Tom Cruise is super clingy, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. We could have put a whole bunch of Mission Impossible stunts on this list, from the real-life Halo jump to Tom Cruise piloting a real helicopter, but Mission Impossible Rogue Nation still might feature the most jaw-dropping of the bunch. In the film's opening sequence, IMF agent Ethan Hunt has to prevent a group of terrorists from transporting nerve gas out of Belarus via a large military cargo plane. But in order to achieve this, he has to run along the wing as it speeds up for takeoff, before hanging onto the outside of the plane as it climbs into the sky. Never one to shy away from a challenge, real-life action man Cruise performed all of the stunts himself, sprinting and sliding across the Airbus's wing, and then clinging onto the side as it took him up to 1,000 1,000 feet in the sky for around 7 minutes, with cameras mounted on the plane and another unit filming from a helicopter. And the only thing standing between Cruise and certain doom was a wire, which was later erased in post-production, and a pair of big rubbery contact lenses to protect his eyes from wind, bugs, and anything else floating around up there. Number 1, the whole cast go all in, balls out, Shortbus. Upon release in 2006, the sex drama Shortbus was notorious for its sexually explicit content, which led to it being banned or boycotted in a variety of locales the world over. Little did these people know, though, that the sex was not only explicit in the movie, but in most cases completely real. The mid-film orgy scene in particular was unsimulated throughout, involving many of the principal cast and a vast assortment of extras, including cameos from porn industry figures. The scene dispenses with any subtlety and shows just about every position and permutations of getting it on. This is noteworthy because in similarly explicit movies like, say, Lars von Trier's Nymphomaniac, the unsimulated scenes actually meld the actors and body doubles, but that's not the case here. Though the feature had a well-earned 18 rating in the UK, it is actually a surprise that the notoriously stringent BBFC agreed to classify it at all.